Hello, dear friends. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, Mukesh English. This is Mukesh Soni. Dear friends, in this video, I have brought you a very famous and interesting and motivational poem, or the poem Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, Robert Frost. I think you might have heard a very nice line, miles to go before I sleep, miles to go before I sleep. This is a poem from which these lines are quite very much famous. So before that, let's know about the greatest poet, Robert Frost. Robert Frost was born in 1874 and passed away in 1963, a very famous, distinguished American poet who was born in San Francisco. Frost spent his early days in Massachusetts. He studied at Harvard and Dartmouth. His first collection of poems, titled Boy's Will, was published in England in 1913. In 1915, he returned to America as a recognized poet. In the course of time, he became the voice of the New England and he won several awards for his poetry. Most of Robert Frost's poems are narratives. He was a poet who believed in the old ways of being new. His pastoral form conveys a varieties of ideas and attitudes. Robert Frost uses natural scenes as a backdrop against which human drama is played out. His style is colloquial in tone, and he is called the Wordsworth of America because Robert Frost poetry, begins in delight and ends in wisdom. Remember, Robert Frost poetry begins in delight and ends in wisdom. That is a brief introduction of the famous American poet Robert Frost. Now, a brief information about this poem. Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening is a poem composed by Robert Frost, written in the year 1922 and published in 1923 in his New Hampshire volume. Imagery, personification, and repetition are the prominent in this work. In a letter to Louis Untermeyer Untermeyer, Frost called it as my best bit for remembrance. The horse rider in this poem, first he looks at the woods as an aspect of nature and admires its beauty. The poem expresses the conflicts between temptation and the social obligation of the speaker. The poem ends with reminding himself that despite the loveliness of the view, I have promises to keep, miles to go before I sleep. This is a brief introduction of the poem. Now, what's the background about this poem? What's the background of this poem? Robert Frost, who composed this poem in June 2022 at his house in Shaftesbury, Vermont. He had been up the entire night writing the long poem New Hampshire from the poetry collection of the same name, and he had finally finished when he realized that morning had come. He went out to view that sunrise and suddenly got an idea to compose the poem, stopping by woods on a snowy evening. Then he wrote the new poem titled About the Snowy Evening and the Little Horse I would, as if I had had a hallucination in just a few minutes without any strain. So, this is the very brief background about Robert Frost's famous poem, Stopping by Woods by a Snowy Evening. Now, let's begin it. The stanza number one. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. The poem begins, I repeat, the poet says, Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. So let's begin it. In this stanza, stanza number one, the poet has stopped in a snowy forest. The owner of the forest was not present there at the time. The poet says that he knows the owner of the forest. He says that I know who is the owner of the forest. His house is in the nearby village. He won't see him stopping there because he won't think that a traveler can stop in the woods at such a very odd hour. Because the owner of the house cannot see him because he has never expected that somebody will stop here, will take a shelter, will stop here in such an odd hour. He's a very practical person, but the poet has a strange, like Robert Frost, the place he starts where the others close. So the poet has stopped in the jungle on a snowy evening. Now stanza number two. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and the frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. I repeat, the poet says, my little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. So, downy means to say covered, and here the what does the poet say here? The poet's horse won't accept the poet stopping easily. So the poet's horse is not accepting. He's thinking, why my master has stopped here when nobody is here? Why has he stopped here? So he's not accepting the poet's halt at this place. He might think that there was no farmhouse nearby. And why did the poet stop between the frozen lake and the woods? Look at the location where the poet has stopped here, and the horse is quite surprised to see that his master has stopped at such a location between the frozen lake and the woods. Not only this, moreover, it is the darkest evening of the year. And does any person stop in the snowy forest at such an odd hour where you cannot see after some time? So this is what his little horse is quite think this something as a very strange thing, because the little horse thinks that why has he stopped here and such a place where the lake is frozen and it's a dense forest, right? And moreover, the timing is here, the time is quite very odd hour, it's quite very darkest evening where after some time nobody can see each other. So this is the horse expression here. Okay, let's move further. The poet further says he gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. I repeat, the poet says he gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. Now, first, let's try to understand some difficult vocabulary here. Harness here refers to the leather bands which is held together by a metal which is used to control a horse or to fasten it to a cart. Okay, now, downy means to say which is covered with feathers. Then we have here flake. Flake means to say a piece of snow. And snow, everybody knows that. Snow here refers to a symbol of beauty. Okay. So now in this stanza, what does the poet Robert Frost says? Robert Frost says here, the horse, his horse, he looks very disgusted, waiting at that uninteresting place. As the poet has already mentioned that the horse is not happy at the place where the poet has halted because he says that, is it a place where there's a frozen lake is here, there's a wood, moreover it's a darkest evening. So the horse is very much disgusted, and he's warning the poet to leave. How does he warn? He is warning the poet to leave. He's trying to break the concentration of his master, the concentration of the poet, and he doubts that the poet has stopped here by mistake. The horse doubts here the poet has stopped here by mistake, so he tries to break the concentration of his master by warning him. And how does he warn? He he gave his harness bells a shake. He shakes his harness bells, and in this manner, the poet hears the sounds of the harness bell, and in this manner, the poet's concentration breaks down. So he is not able to concentrate now. Along with this sound, the poet hears one more sound. What's the sound? The sound of sweep of easy wind and downy flake. This is the beauty of nature. At one point of time, he's also hearing the harness bells sound. At the same time, he's also hearing the sweep of easy wind and the downy flake. So he's enjoying both. Same time, he's very much alert by by his horse, who is warning him, who is giving him alert to move further. Same time, he does not want to leave the moment of ecstasy, the moment of natural beauty, right, in the form of the sound of the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. Okay, let's move to the last stanza of this poem, the stanza number 4. Very interesting stanza and very motivational. The poet saw, sorry, the very interesting stanza here. The poet says, the woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. I repeat, I love this last stanza. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Now, here we have seen the poet has seen the woods. It looked lovely, dark, deep, dense forest, and the poet is fascinated by the woods. He wants to watch such spiritual beauty forever. But the horse harness bells brought him to earth, brought him to reality. Now he realizes that he has a lot of promises to be fulfilled, and to fulfill the promise, what should he do? He has to move on now. He has to walk miles together. He has to continue his journey because he recollects that, he recalls that, he remembers that now his life is short. At any moment, death may come. Before that, you must reach your goal, fulfill your promises. Otherwise, at the verge of death, you will just cry, "Oh, death, please wait. I have not yet finished my duties and my responsibilities." So, this stanza, it's a kind of realization, self realization. It's an eye opener for everybody who sometimes gets tempted, fascinated by the external beauty, and they forget the objective of their life. They forget the main goal of their life. So let's try to recollect what does the poet say in the whole poem in a very simple way. So let me just tell you once again. Once this poet, he was returning to his farmhouse through the woods in the evening time, and he stopped his horse. He got down and he watched the jungle's beauty on the snowy evening very keenly. He enjoyed the beauty wholeheartedly. Since he was endowed with a poetic temperament, he got charmed, but his horse could not take interest in the frozen swamp. The horse expressed his disgust and gave his harness bells a shake, and the poet, who was in the absorbing mood, the warning of the horse brought the poet back from the fancy world to the reality. He came to the reality. He realized that even if the jungle is lovely, dark, and deep, he can't stay there permanently because he has a lot of promises to fulfill. He has a lot of promises to keep. He has to fulfill a lot of ambitions before death. So, what does he do? He just leaves the place. So, this is what the poet has conveyed the message in this poem. Now, let's have some more further discussion about this poem. Let's have the discussion about the symbols. The poet has used here a few symbols. Number one, woods. Here, wood symbolizes as a contrast to the civilization. Through this poem, woods, jungles can be categorized also as a symbol of death. Second is here, nature. In this poem, nature is the symbol and the snow is a symbol of coolness. On the other hand, frozen flake is a symbol of the death and the chillness of life. Sometimes don't we say chill, chill, baby, chill means to say relax. And when do we get relaxed? When we die. Horse. Horse is a symbol here. Horse is a symbol of a soul of the poet. So in this poem, Robert Frost takes horse as a symbol which symbolizes as a soul of the poet. Next is here sleep. Next symbol is here sleep. Robert Frost conveys his ideas by the word sleep. So this word symbolizes death, and this word tells that before death, an individual has to complete on has to complete has to fulfill his promises. Then the last but not the least symbol we have here, village. Village is symbolized here as a society and as a civilization. Now, let's have a discussion about the structure and the poetic devices employed in this poem. The poem consists of four stanzas, wherein the first, second, and the fourth line of each stanzas have a rhyme, and the rhyming scheme of this poem can be AA, BA, BB, CB, CC, DC, DD, DD. Through this poem, through the poem, which is very much simple, the poem is loaded with so many meanings on account of the uses of literary devices. And here, imagery is used to make the readers feel things through the senses. The imagery is used in such a manner that you feel through your senses. So the poet has used the images for the sense of sight, means to say to see. Example, snow covered woods, house, horse, frozen lake, etc. These images helps us to perceive the woods, the jungle, as a source of solace and comfort to a lonely traveler. So there are two extended metaphors also used in this poem. The last line of the third stanza, quote, sweep of easy wind and downy flake, unquote. And the last line with the repetition, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. So we find here two extended metaphors in these two expressions. Here, miles represent life's long journey, while sleep represents here death. So, dear friends, we can also notice here enjambment, a kind of poetic device where one line runs into another without a loss of sense. So, enjambment has been employed here throughout the poem. So, this is the brief information about the poetic devices used in this poem. Now, let's sum up this poem. Here, the poem is very symbolic of life's long journey, which is embedded with responsibility and loyalty towards life's purposes. The speaker, the poet, who stops by the snow clad woods on a snowy evening, he takes in the lovely scene in near silence, and he is tempted to stay there for long duration, but very soon he acknowledges the pull of obligations and the considerable distance yet to be traveled before sleep. Means to say, he recalls that before I die, I have a lot of things, a lot of promises, a lot of objectives to be fulfilled, a lot of goals to be reached. So I should not stop my journey here. I need to move on. So, thus, the poet conveys the message that one must focus on life's goals without yielding to the temptations which might cause distractions. So, dear friends, I hope this poem will definitely teach us a lot of lessons of our life. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this video, click on the like button, write in the comment box. If you're not yet subscribed my channel, please do subscribe. So many things are in the line to come on this channel. Thank you once again. Dear friends, thank you so much for watching this video. You can reach me at mukeshenglish@gmail.com. Please do subscribe the channel, click on the like button for more videos on literature, workbook, pronunciation, grammar, communication skills, presentation skills, interview skills. Stay in tune with Mukesh English. Thank you once again.